Hello and welcome to my tutorial on how to create your own map for BMX Streets pipe. Just a quick disclaimer, this tutorial is long and the process is fairly difficult to get comfortable with, but once you've done the process a few times it becomes pretty easy. Before we begin, you'll want to make sure you have a few tools. A 3D modeling software such as Blender, Unity version 2018.2.4 F1, the most recent version of DevX Unity Unpacker Magic Tools, Unity Asset Bundle Extractor version 2.2 Beta 4, Asset Studio, and any text editor. I will provide links in the description for the harder to find or less popular tools. If you don't have these tools, please take a moment to pause the video and get them installed. Once you have all of the programs installed, I suggest opening up DevX Unity, dragging in the pipe data folder, and taking a quick look at how the game is structured. The pipe data folder can generally be found in the C drive, program files, x86, Steam apps, common pipe data. This will take several minutes to load up depending on your system. Once loaded, click the plus symbol next to the scenes section. The simplest map to mod is going to be the mod map level, since the entire map is made up of a single 3D object. Let's have a look at its structure. Here you'll see that there is a file called quarter pipe textured. This file with the Unity cube symbol next to it is what's known as a game object. Click on the plus sign to the left of the game object to expand it. Now you'll notice that there are 4 children files attached to it. A mesh collider, which uses a 3D model to determine where the collision with the character will occur. Without this, you'd simply just be able to move right through the object. A mesh filter uses a 3D model to render the object in the scene. The collider and the filter can use the same model, but if you do it this way, you'll want to ensure that all grindable surfaces are square. If you want to have round rails, you'll need to make sure that you have a separate model for collision and rendering. Mesh renderer. This file applies materials to your model. At its basic form, a material uses texture images and can be glossy, metallic, or dull. It is also associated with a shader. Shaders are code written to define the parameters of a material. They can be simple, or they can do things like animate a material such as the leaves of a tree. For our purposes, we will only be using the standard shader. Finally, we have a transform file. The transform file defines where the object will be positioned in the game space. I'm going to export this model from the game so that I can use it as a reference for where to put my custom model. In DevX, we can easily find the model's location. We'll need to use Asset Studio for this step. Open Asset Studio and click File, Load File. Select Shared Assets 5. Click on the Asset List tab and you'll see the cube .011 mesh. Right-click on it and select Export Selected Assets. Save it anywhere you'd like. It will automatically create a folder called Mesh with the model inside. I'm going to make a folder in pipe data called Mods and save it there. Let's go ahead and import this model into Blender. We will be removing this model once we are finished scaling our new object. We'll need to rotate this model 90 degrees. To do so, hit R on the keyboard and the model will freely rotate with the mouse cursor. Hit X to lock rotation along the X axis. For more precise movements, hold Shift while rotating. Now, let's get our custom 3D model. You can grab a pre-made one from the internet, or you can create one on your own. I will not be doing a 3D modeling tutorial today, but there are hundreds of them that you can find. In order for materials to work properly in game, your model will need to be UV unwrapped. If you don't know what that is, I recommend taking some time to look it up. If you want your object to use multiple materials, you'll need to set it up here. It's easiest to do this with a model that has been split into split into separate parts, but it can also be done in a single mesh. Select the model, hit the Tab button on the keyboard to enter edit mode. Select the faces you want to apply material to. I like to make my materials different colors just so I can easily tell the difference. If your model is made up of separate models like mine is, we need to merge them together before exporting. To do this, simply hold down Ctrl and right-click on each part of the model. When everything is selected, hit Ctrl-J on the keyboard to join them together. Finally, we need to make sure that the transform data in Blender is set to 0 for our model. On the keyboard, press Ctrl-A. When the menu pops up, select Scale. We'll need to check all of these boxes here. Then click on this cube to verify that everything looks correct. Now that we have everything set up, let's export the model as FBX and save it. Open up Unity and create a new project. You can name this whatever you'd like. Let's drag in our model and our textures we want to use in the project window. We'll also want to drag in the reference model that we exported from the game. Go ahead and drag these models into the scene. Back in DevX, let's have a look at the transform data. We will copy the position and scale from it into Unity to use on the original model. Now we can use the same position data for our new object. Click on the custom model to highlight it. Let's click Add Component. We'll want to go to Physics and select Mesh Collider. Here we can choose the model to be used for collision. By default, it will use the same model as the renderable mesh. Next, we'll want to set up our materials. To do this, simply right-click in the project window and go to Create, Material. Now we can drag and drop our textures into the texture slots. You can apply this material to the object by dragging and dropping it on the model. If we zoom in here, you can see that the texture is too large. Let's go ahead and change the tiling to 25 by 25. Normally, this process would be done in Blender using proper UV unwrapping. With these sliders, you can change the smoothness or reflectiveness and also the metallic properties of the material. Once you're happy with the way things look, go to File, Save Scene, then Build Settings, and let's click Add Open Scenes and then Build. Here it will ask you where to build it. Just create a new folder, select it, then save. Once the build is complete, we'll want to open the files in DevX to have a look at them and ensure that they have the same structure that we want. Here we can also find the location of each file we're going to need to extract. Open up Unity Asset Bundle Extractor, or UABE, and then open up Shared Assets 0.assets. Let's go through and select all of our materials using Control-click, and then click on Export Dump. We'll make a new folder here called Materials and save them. Next, we want to find all the textures. We will need to export them all as raw first. Make a folder called Raw Textures. Then we'll use Plugins, Export to PNG. Save these in a folder called Textures. The last thing we'll need from Shared Assets 0 is the model or mesh. Find it, then export it as raw. Make a folder called Raw Meshes. Let's go back into DevX and find the location of our game object and all of its children. Open the Level 0 file. Select all the assets and export them as dump. Make a new folder called Dumps. Now we'll need to add them into the pipe game files. We'll want to add textures, materials, meshes, then the game object and children in that order. The reason for this is that we'll have to edit the text dumps and change the path IDs and file IDs to match the new files that we're adding. You can put the materials, models, and textures in nearly any of the asset bundles, such as Shared Assets 2 or Resources.assets, but for simplicity's sake, we'll put everything in the Level 5 file. Let's open up Level 5 from Pipe Data in UABE. Find a texture already in the files. Highlight the value in the type box and copy it with Ctrl+C. Go to File, Add, and paste that value in the type name/ID box, then click OK. Do this for as many textures that you're adding. Now select each texture and click Import Raw. Go ahead and save and close the level 5 file, then drag it into pipe data and replace the current one. Open the file again in UABE. Click the Path ID tab to sort by Path ID so that your added textures appear at the top. Select them all, then click Plugins, Batch Import. It will ask you to select a folder. We'll want to choose our Textures folder. Now, one by one, select and load the PNG textures into the correct file names using the Edit Load option. When finished, hit OK. Once again, save the level 5 file, close, replace in pipe data, and reopen. Before we do anything else, find a material that is already in the game files. Select it, then click Export Raw. Name it something like Raw Base Material. Now copy the value in the type box just like with the textures. Add your new materials using File, Add. Now import that raw base material file over each material. Save, close, and reopen level 5. Before we import the text dumps, we're going to have to edit them with a text editor. I personally prefer to use Notepad++, but you can use any text editor you'd like. In UABE, with level 5 open, we can go to View, Dependencies, to see which asset bundles we are able to reference. At the top of the text file, you'll see a Shader section. Change the file ID here to 3, and the path ID to 300. Next, scroll down until you find the main text section. This file ID should remain 0, and the path ID will be that of your newly added texture in level 5. Save the text file. Do this for any additional materials you may be adding, then go ahead and import them one by one as dump in UABE. But you should make note of the path IDs for use when editing the mesh renderer file. Again, save, close, reopen level 5. Now we'll need to find an existing mesh in level 5. Copy the value in the type box, and then add a new mesh. Go ahead and import the raw custom mesh you made. Save, close, reopen level 5. At this point we're nearly done. All that's left to do is add our game object and children files. In UABE, find, copy, and add one of each of the files by copying and pasting their type: game object, transform, mesh renderer, mesh filter, and mesh collider. Go ahead and open each of the file dumps in a text editor. In the game object file, you'll need to change each path ID to match the corresponding path IDs for the files you just added. The order does not matter. In each additional file, you must change the game object path ID so that the file is a child of your new game object. Change the file ID and path ID of the mesh filter and mesh collider to match your added model. Finally, change each material path ID in the mesh renderer to match your new materials. The order here does matter. Refer back to DevX with the Unity project you built open in order to reference the current material path IDs with the new ones. Now, double check all your text dumps for errors, then save them all. In UABE, you can now select and import each one. When finished, save the file and close it, making sure to replace level 5 and pipe data. If everything was done correctly, you can now load up the mod map and pipe, and your new object will be there in game. If for any reason your game crashes or nothing appears to be different in the game, open up DevX and drag in the pipe data folder. You can use this to check if the file structure is correct. The most common issue is a mistake made when editing the dumps for the game object, or when editing the material dumps. I hope that after completing this tutorial that you feel confident in making your own maps for the game. If you get stuck at any point, feel free to comment and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can.